In a democracy, citizens need to be informed. Informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Tonight on our program, we will be discussing the challenges of Southern California high school student athletes. Today, we have two very distinguished individuals. Rob Wigod, who's the commissioner of the California Interscholastic Federation Southern Section. That organization governs high school competitive sports in Southern California. Jim McCormack is the former sports editor of the Long Beach Press-Telegram. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. It is indeed my honor to have you here. I've been trying to get Rob on the program for many months, and he finally cleared his schedule to be here. But gentlemen, we have some very serious issues facing Southern California or national high school student athletes. Tonight, we're going to want to be discussing the transfer rule, Rob, that your organization has to kind of govern, and the injuries that you and I have talked about before that are plaguing high school and professional athletes as they matriculate. And then a key issue of private and public school competition, which seems to be not on the even field right now. But in the half hour that we have here, I hope that we can spread some insight on how tough it is to have policies in the CIF, Southern Section, and the way sports used to be as opposed to as it is right now, Jim. Rob, let's start with you. I was looking in the LA Times, and the sports editor there was talking about the number of transfers, almost 800 transfers this season so far from student athletes, male and female, going from one school to another. That must be a tough situation for you guys to govern.
Well, it is. First of all, thanks for having me. It's I feel like I'm sitting in Long Beach royalty here with you and Jim, who I've known for so long. And transfers are a challenge for us and a big issue for us. People are very, very interested in that. Our rules are made by the member schools, not by me or anybody else who works for the CIF or the Southern Section. So we have to have that balance between what our schools want and what our legislators will accept, what our legal system will accept, and that makes it difficult. Transfers are a way of life. That I think the thing we're trying to do is manage the transfers in the best way possible. You want to set clear guidelines and clear rules for those transfers, and if they're done within those rules, then there can't be a real issue. It's the ones that maybe happen outside of the rules that you certainly would get. Well, again, a student who has been recruited to a school, who's been offered something to a school to try to get them to attend. That's going to be something that we would be deeply involved in and try to uphold the bylaws about recruiting. Those are not easy, again, to uphold sometimes. We depend on, our organization is based on our principals, our athletic directors, knowing the rules, enforcing the rules and following the rules.
Self-enforcement too,
absolutely, right? And that's the way our 106-year-old organization was set up at the beginning, and it's still that way today.
Jim, when you and I came along, your parents said you're going to go to this school, you're going to commit to this school, and you're going to stay in this school. That's not happening right now. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, I think in a lot of cases there's just so much parental investment financially and emotionally and time, all aspects of investment in kids that the parents are involved almost like managers. The times you were talking about, people wanted their kids to play for coaches, the coaches in their community that they knew and had a reputation for making kids better, both athletically and as human beings. And now the emphasis, I think, at the apex of these issues, the issue more is performance on the field or on the court, and then the opportunities for scholarships. And it's in the majority of the cases, it's a fool's gold. Most kids can't perform well enough to get a scholarship. The elite ones can, for sure, but it just leaves everything in kind of a tense relationship all the time. And if a parent's not happy with what's happening with their child at a particular school, it's the common response now is to just leave.
Isn't that sending a terrible message as a parent that when I, as a student athlete or any kid, faces a tough situation where you're not chosen, you're demoted, you have to applaud for somebody else, isn't it sending the wrong message, or is it, Rob, that your parent says, you don't have to go through this, let's go to greener grass?
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think we're not teaching our young people how to stay with something, how to deal with adversity. One of the great things that education-based athletics teaches young people is how to overcome being hurt and tired and hot and cold and all these other things, wanting your own individual goal that must be set aside for your team. I think we are missing the boat when all we tell our young people is, this isn't working, there's another place for us to go.
Let's back up for a minute. Articulate the mission for CIF Southern Section, or CIF period. What is your mission statement? What are you guys trying to do?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking it. We are an education-based athletics organization. That's what we are. Our motto is academics, athletics, integrity. It's academics first. Mm-hmm. Our schools are open for what they do to educate young people.
Student athletes.
Absolutely. And that's first for us, first and foremost. But we believe there's a classroom outside the building. And we believe the lessons that we can teach through athletics and the perseverance, the hard work, the teamwork, all these qualities and values you can learn through athletics. I was a social studies teacher. I wasn't able to teach those things in the same manner in a social studies classroom. I didn't have the platform. But our teacher coaches have that platform. And those relationships, the mentoring that gets done through the experiences in high school athletics, we're the only ones that do it. I have no disrespect or bad feeling for club or travel organizations, those that Jim referenced, but I still believe we do something very unique. We're educating the total student. It's all about them academically, socially, emotionally, psychologically, athletically, and that's really what we're about. So that's where we want to focus our efforts on educating the student athletes through athletics.
Jim, it's more tougher than it used to be with that, but you and I had a conversation last night about sports injuries and the hours that kids putting into sports right now and the travel they have to do to go from school to school, from home to school, But the injuries that we look at, particularly tell us about pitchers, young pitchers, and the injuries that they, after the innings and time they put into pitching, and their arms taking a terrible toll.
Well, I think the expectations for our kids are just the physical expectations are reaching the point in many cases where it's sadly unreasonable. We're seeing in the major leagues now 21, 22-year-old pitchers that come in that pitch like they're 40. I mean, they really know how to pitch. They're dynamic in the way they pitch, and they're being seriously injured, arm injuries, by the time they're 23, 24. Mm-hmm. I think it seems, I recall hearing a statistic this year that there were 117 pitchers in the major leagues that had Tommy John surgery, and these are athletes who are less than 26, 27. So the burden, they play travel ball. If you're in a state like California where the weather's basically gorgeous year round, these kids are pitching the equivalent of close to a major league season, clearly the equivalent of a college season from the time they're 8 years old, and through all of their growth dynamics. And I just don't think it bodes well for them. I think it's a mistake, and a concerning mistake.
Rob, when you look at some of the guys who were running backs, basketball players, when they get to be 40, 50 years old, and how they're walking and barely getting around, it's kind of sad to see, what you say.
Well, there's no question about that, and I think what we're seeing is the overuse injuries. Mm-hmm. And there's a dream being sold, and the dream is that next level. Where I think, and I'd ask you as a coach all your years that you began, when you were coaching, the number of opportunities for student athletes to go to college is probably the same today. Mm-hmm. There's 85 Division I football scholarships, and there have been 85 Division I football scholarships probably for 30, 40 years. But the number of people who believe they have the chance to get one has changed incredibly.
It certainly has.
So if we have the opportunities that have grown that much, then I could see it. But we've actually had a dream being sold with the same number of opportunities, yet unbelievable increases in people who think they're going to get them. And they're going to get them by paying for private coaches. They're going to pay for instruction and extra work here and there. And the money that they're going to invest and the time they're going to invest to try to make that dream come true, as I mentioned, there just aren't the number of opportunities that they believe are there.
I'd like to switch reels a little bit. Rob, it's been tough to kind of coordinate the private schools and the public schools. And when we look at the CIF bracketing and we see the lopsided competition that it takes place between private and public school, when you look at the LA Times ranking, you see the private schools at the top. And great schools like Long Beach Poly now are struggling, even in a football program, which was really great at one time, is almost settling into mediocrity. How, as a governing body, can you intercede? And some people say they should have their own leagues. What is your answer to that?
I like to believe that we've actually done something the last 3 years. This is the third year of a new competitive equity playoff system. What we have done now is evaluate individual schools. Public, private, small, medium, big, charter schools, single gender schools. It really doesn't matter who you are. It's how good or how not good is your program. And we've set up a system where we take every individual school in 14 different sports and we rank them by their performance the last 2 years. And what we're finding is that the competition, the competitive level, is not related to who you are anymore. It's related to how good your program is or how not good your program is. So I have lots of examples of private schools that have maybe 300, 400 students defeating public schools with 2,000 students. But I have the opposite. We have the large public schools. Just because you're a large public school doesn't mean you're a great program. And so what we've tried to do, we found meeting notes in the 1920s talking about public and private schools. And the same conversation's always been, the publics do this, the privates do this, how do they all compete against each other? I think what we've tried to do is move the conversation forward. Let's not talk about the size of the school, whether it's public or private. Let's talk about how good you are or how not good you are. And let's provide a competitive environment that gives you a chance. Doesn't mean you're going to win every single game or win the championship, but you have a chance. So I was saying a little bit earlier, our first round in football before this system in one division at the top, Division I, 37 points was the average margin of victory. Last year, 13 points. It's proving to be, about your level of performance and not necessarily your demographic. So Centennial High School of Corona is going to play Mater Dei Friday night. They should play each other. One is public, one is private. Does it really matter? Who's the best team? And that's a great matchup.
Jim, what would you say? You're sitting here and Rob articulating a very tough situation in the way they're handling. What would be your response there?
I think, frankly, I think this ranking system that they've done in the last, as Rob said, in the last 3 years is effective. I'm friends with some of the people at Artesia High School, and their football team's in a CIF semifinal. I don't think they've ever been in the CIF semifinals, have they?
They haven't.
And they're beside themselves. It's an opportunity that in years previous was not available to them. So I think it's a step. All of these things are really complicated and likely ultimately imperfect to one degree or another. But this is a real step in the right direction in a complicated situation. There's some really good news stories coming out of what's transpiring now.
We need some good news. I think in the transition period, historically, we're looking at right now some of the old values that we hold dear need to be reinforced because it worked and it universally worked. In our next segment, guys, we're going to talk about, and we're all Long Beach guys here, we're going to talk about Long Beach sports, and the guru over here, that we're going to have him dominate this discussion, but Long Beach sports from the recreation park area to the high school area, even to the middle school area. Some of it's being challenged, but it's such a rich tradition. Long Beach State, Long Beach City College. I want to talk about that in our second half of the program. Rob Wigod and Jim McCormack, two friends of mine, we're talking about the challenges of student athletes in sports. We'll be right back after these messages. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker. Welcome back. We're visiting with Rob Wigod, who is the commissioner for the CIF Southern Section, and Jim McCormack, the former sports editor of the Long Beach Press-Telegram. We're talking about high school student sports in the Southern California area, but we're going to zero in on Long Beach sports guys. And we grew up, I came Long Beach 50 years ago, and I got involved with the Poly program and the Moore League and all the great sports there in Long Beach. I mean, even from the recreation area and the middle school area. Jim, you're kind of the guru legend on here. What is it so special about Long Beach sports?
Well, it now has a history that personally I think is probably second to none. But it was always a community, a unique community in Southern California for its age that really had a special investment in its youngsters, and there were always people here, adults willing to coach and spend their time to work with these kids, and you know it's the breadth of its history is remarkable. The LPGA, the Women's Golf Tour, the pioneers from that included 2 or 3 women from Long Beach back in the 30s, and then Billie Jean King was a pioneer in women's tennis and aquatics and track, and then you go to the more traditional high school sports. Wilson High has had more Olympians than any school in the country. Poly's had more NFL. So the legacy the legacy is just awe-inspiring, frankly, and it's something that I hope continues. It's a different world now, and I think one of the sad parts about it is that there is in my mind, there's a de-emphasis on institutional history, which there's less priority placed on it, and in Long Beach's case in sports, that would be really, really sad, because the number of young people whose lives have been incredibly changed by what they were able to do athletically in Long Beach is probably incalculable.
But speaking of that, Mike Grabowski, I'm killing his name. He wrote a book about Long Beach sports. You guys have seen that.
Yes.
And that's the type of institutional. Yeah, Grabowski. That's the type of education that you're talking about. Rob, you're a Long Beach guy.
I am. I'm proud of it.
Tell us about how you feel about it, and give us some of the glory when you were coming up as a kid, what you remember.
Well, again, I think Jim hit on it. I'm a product of Long Beach, and it started for me as a young kid on the summer playgrounds and in the parks,
yes.
Then into the middle school sports that we had, junior high sports in those days, and into the high school days. And those were some of the greatest athletes that Long Beach, I wasn't one of them, but there were a lot of them at the schools and the people that I got to watch and play against. And I just, knowing what I know growing up here and then working for the CIF, where I see everybody,
yeah.
I realize and appreciate Long Beach even more, and the Moore League, and what this tradition means. The coaches I had, the impact they made on my life.
Name some of the coaches.
Well, John Meyer, Skip Rowland, Owen Dixon, that I had at Wilson, they were as much of an impact on me. The only one more was my own father. And those gentlemen taught me virtually everything that I wanted to be. And I became a social studies teacher and a football coach and an athletic director because of men like that. But it wasn't just our coaches at Wilson. There were so many great coaches at the other schools, and just competing against them. When I got into coaching myself, getting to know them even better as a coach, as a young person in college, it made an incredible impression on me. And I never would have thought I would be sitting in the CIF Southern Section office in charge of high school sports from Southern California. And I was this regular kid who went to Wilson High School, but loved high school sports and loved the experience that I got through that and made it my life, made it my career.
But it's a sad part of that, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. As time goes by, almost gone with the wind, we see the tail off in talent in the major sports in Long Beach, like in football, and not so much in baseball. They still have some really good, but in basketball, we see Poly ravaging through the Moore League in scores it's not really preparing them for. But the drop off in talent, Jim, has really been noticeable in those sports, not in the other sports, like in water polo and soccer, but in the two major sports. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's just the current environment. I was talking with Frank Burleson just the other day, and he said you can look at some of these, like the rosters at Mater Dei and St. John Bosco, and you'll see children of people who were great athletes at Poly.
Yeah.
And in the past, everybody in Long Beach wanted to stay in Long Beach.
Yes.
I mean, everything they needed athletically was at Long Beach. Depending, you went to Wilson if it was water polo, Poly if it was football or basketball, but there was a much greater sense of community. Now everything is so fluid that the geographical issues have changed, and it's part of the new reality. Sadly, I think.
Let's talk about Cal State Long Beach sports history. I mean, there was some just outstanding, Rob, athletes. I mean, and coaches. George Allen coached there. Tex Winter coached there. That meant a lot to the Long Beach community in terms of Long Beach State being a great athletic town, wouldn't you say?
It is, and it's about continuity. I think when you see successful programs, it's because they have continuity, they have tradition, they have standards that they live up to. The Long Beach State story is more outside of their control in that the haves and have-nots in the Division I level at the NCAA, that gap has just gone wider and wider and wider. At a time when the NCAA would regulate how many times you were on TV and if you had a football program or whatever. Nowadays, as we know, the Power Five run the NCAA.
That's right.
And if you're not in the Power Five, you're just in a whole different world. And that's the struggle. Long Beach State has the best building in the Big West. It's the best location.
That's right.
It's an opportunity to go to the tournament every single year in terms of the competitive level in the conference. I'm a proud Long Beach State grad, and I know the challenges that the program faces with continuity, keeping the players, and just the environment Jim's described. And you've got one of the greatest ever sitting out here in the waiting room that's going to join you in a few minutes, and Glenn McDonald. We all loved and idolized those guys, and they were there for 3 years and 4 years, and we got to follow their progress. And unfortunately, today's environment just doesn't allow for some of that.
Jim, when you think of Long Beach City College sports, what do you think about?
Well, I think Long Beach City has its own great history. Again, and you don't want to sit around lamenting like an old timer that everything was better then. It was different. But in the days when Long Beach City College had its great history, typically it was because many of the kids from Long Beach high schools went to Long Beach City College after high school. Mm-hmm. And so it was local, and it had that identity. It was a place, a reasonable place people thought to go from high school here, and they had wonderful successes. I mean, some of their football teams and some of their basketball teams and some of their baseball teams and their track teams are legendary.
That's right. Ron
Alice.
Yes.
Currently they have some real. They're writing a new history now. It's different. Misty May is the volleyball coach there.
Yes, that's right.
And their men and women just won conference water polo championships. They've had the football team's a little up and down, but they've had some pretty good football teams in the last couple of years, and their coach there is terrific. So it's the same with City, the high schools in Long Beach. They're in a different world. and a more complicated world, but it also shows that even in those situations, if the right coach is there, I mean, you take
Leadership.
you take Alan Knipe at Long Beach State with men's volleyball. They can play. I mean, they're national champions. They can play with anybody. Buckley with the Dirtbags has got them competitive. And then the same thing applies at City, and it can apply in the high schools. Although the issue now with the high schools with so many walk-on coaches, all three of us have agreed that not having on-campus coaches is an incredible detriment to
Rob,
athletic success.
you were going to say something.
You know what I want to offer up is we've talked about some of the real changes that have taken place. But I think in our 106-year history, I want people to think about this. All we hear about now is how divided we are as a society, how we can't get along, we aren't the same race, religion, we're not from the same place, socioeconomically, there's wide gaps. And then I say, but wait a minute, look at a high school sports team. What does that show you? It shows you a bunch of different student athletes who are different colors, different religions, different languages, different socioeconomic status, different everything, who set aside their personal goals for the benefit of the team so the team can achieve as a group. Look at that example. Isn't that what everyone says that the United States needs to be and our society needs to be?
Yes.
So while we talk about transfers and we talk about injuries and we talk about the changing history and the dynamics that have gone on, I guess I still want to bring people back. We've been doing this for 106 years, and we're still doing it. And what we're doing is showing, I think, an incredible example of how people can get along, how they can work together, how they can set aside what divides them and actually pull together and do it. And I think people need to look at us in that high school sports arena and realize what kids are learning and how that adults can learn from that.
But the key to it, guys, is leadership at that coaching level. That coach who can bring that diversity together. I mean, because there are some natural conflicts there. The school administration has to support a coach. But if a coach is a good leader and he understands the diversity, that he can bring that team together, Jim, and they can play up to their potential.
Rob's, frankly, I agree completely with Rob's point, and I'm elated that he brought it up, because when you watch high school teams, the diversity among the teams is remarkable, and the different styles and these different beliefs, and these kids come together and work as a unit. And to tell you the truth, while there's an awful lot of negative narrative going on nationally right now, the truth is those teams more accurately reflect the America that I live in than the narratives that we're exposed to almost constantly. Southern California is a beautifully diverse place, and in my circumstances, just in daily living, we encounter people of all persuasions, and I would say for Joan and me, my wife and I, 95% of the time, the experiences are absolutely invigorating, uplifting. This is a better place than we're told that it is. So your point was money.
Well, Joan, now you guys have been married for how long?
41 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Fun time.
Fun time. And you've seen some.
Best of times.
You guys seen some great sports occurrences in this town in Long Beach, which I think, especially like Lakewood. Even Lakewood had been considered one of the best sports towns.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, they have such an incredible park and recreation system, and Jim knows we serve on the board of electors for the City of Lakewood Hall of Fame, and they have just committed tremendous resources to their parks and recreation programs. And so when they have been chosen as America's best recreation program and so forth. They really do. They put a lot of effort and money and resources into the youth sports programs in the city.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and we could go on and on and on. We almost went on and on till you cut us off last night on the telephone. We could go on and on and on about high school sports and how passionate you guys are, we are, in terms of trying to show these boys and girls the right way to go and how to compete with some integrity, with which your organization tries to do. Thank you so much for being on the television program, Rob. We finally got you on at this table.
Thank
and we're
you.
glad to
I'm happy to
have
come
you
back anytime.
Jim McCormack, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we've had a great discussion and conversations with Erroll Park with these two gentlemen who happen to be good friends of mine about high school sports. There are some challenges there, but I think with good leadership and passion, you can overcome any kind of challenge. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the program, and we'll be back with more exciting guests next week on Conversations with Erroll Parker. Good night. In a democracy, citizens need to be informed about policies, issues, homelessness, law enforcement, and social services. In order for people to make good decisions that affect their lives, they need to be informed. Conversations with Erroll Parker.